And our first speaker is Jennifer Link. She is a PhD candidate from UC Davis, studying Dr. Carly Moody's lab. And she is going to talk about nail trimming in shelter cats. Hello. Yeah, looking forward to telling you all about what I did. So I'll be talking about my study where I used a behavior modification strategy to improve nail trim success in adult shelter cats. So first, a little bit of background. Many cats spend time in an animal shelter. An estimated almost 3 million cats entered shelters in the United States and Canada in the most recent reported years. And these cats are often exposed to lots of additional stressors, things like unfamiliar people, unfamiliar environments, and new or unpredictable schedules. And at intake, a health exam is often done, and this can include a nail trim. Nail trims are really important to reduce painfully overgrown nails, as well as injury to owners and furniture, both things that cat owners tend to really dislike. So when it comes to actually performing a nail trim, the current recommendations are mostly around slowly getting the cat used to handling, going at the cat's pace, using lots of treats and praise, and then using a few different behavior modification strategies that I'll talk a lot more about later. However, in a veterinary setting, a lot of times vets report using full body restraint to immobilize the cats during these procedures. And full body restraint has been shown to increase negative responses in cats and has been used to study psychological stress. So we know that it induces stress in these animals. And currently, no method has been established to reduce the stress of a nail trim for both the cats and the handlers. And so that is what we wanted to do. So we wanted to create a protocol using a combination of behavior modification strategies to increase nail trim success in adult shelter cats. For our cats, we used cats from the Sacramento SPCA. They had to be between 1 and 10 years old. They had to be in the shelter for at least 3 days with 4 paws and 18 intact claws. They couldn't be within 3 or 5 days of a spay or neuter, and they couldn't be on any behavior altering medication. We then split them into 3 groups, the protocol, handling, and control groups, which I'll explain in much more detail later, but for now, just know that there were 3 groups. And we matched them based on age, sex, neuter status, and length of stay in the shelter. And then we randomly assigned wherever we could. So first, I'll talk a little bit about the behavior modification techniques that we used. So first, we use something called cooperative care, which means something different, often depending on what kind of care is being done with the animal. But for the purposes of our study, we just introduced this mat. And basically, the whole point of cooperative care is to allow the animal to have some agency. And we wanted to allow the cat to control all of the interactions with me. So here was our setup. I was seated right behind this mat here. And basically the cat was placed in front of the mat. And as soon as they put their front 2 paws on the mat, that was when I would interact with them. If they walked away, I would stop. If they came back, I'd start again. And so I'll show you. She's loving the attention. She walks away, looks around, kind of confused, nudges me, and we're back on the mat. And so for many cats, this involved treats if they preferred that. This cat just seemed to like pets, but first time that I interacted with all of the cats, I would give them lots of treats, I'd give them pets, and I'd try to figure out what they seemed to prefer the most. So the other type of behavior modification that we used is desensitization and counter conditioning. And so desensitization refers to this gradual, stepwise exposure to some fear-inducing stimuli in order to reduce the fearful or avoidant reactions. And then the counter conditioning also paired that fearful stimuli with something favorable, positive. So for us, we developed a 5-step protocol where the first step is handling the front paws or front legs. Second step is handling the front paws, followed by squeezing the paw to reveal the nails, touching the clipper to all the nails, and finally trimming the tip of one nail. And all the while, we're giving lots of praise and treats and whatever the cat seems to like. The way that this worked in conjunction with the mat was that I would only ever do the protocol when the cat was on the mat. And if they struggled or stepped off, I would just stop. And so I would try to get through as many steps as I could in one day. And if I couldn't get to step 5 without the cat struggling or walking away, I would just start again the next day at step 1 and just continue to do that. So now I'll go through the 3 groups. First, in the protocol group, the first stage of this was habituation and cooperative care. So this is where the cat was introduced to me, to the room, to the mat. And this, we exclusively did the cooperative care. So there was no protocol just yet. But what you saw in the video earlier is exactly what we did. Just if the cat walks on the mat, I pet her, I give her treats. If she walks off, I stop. Following that, this group got the protocol. So again, I'd work through as many steps as I could in a given day while giving treats and pets. And if I couldn't get to step 5, then I would just start again the next day at step 1. And on the day following completion of the 5th step, these cats would get a nail trim. And this consisted of me walking over, picking up the cat, and trying to trim as many nails as I could in one day. If the cat struggled, I let go. If they walked away, I let go. So next, onto the handling condition. These cats started in exactly the same way. They also got this habituation. They also got this cooperative care. So they were introduced to me. They were introduced to the mat. But the difference is that on that second phase, they only got the cooperative care. So I just kept petting them. I kept giving them treats when they walked onto the mat. I didn't do any protocol. And now the number of days that the cats experienced this cooperative care was matched to those in the protocol group. And so if there was a cat in the protocol group that took 3 days to get to step 5, there would just be a similar cat in the handling group that would get 3 days of cooperative care. And then following the last day of that, they would get the exact same nail trim test that I described earlier. And finally, in the control group, these cats got no habituation, they got no protocol or cooperative care. Okay. And then they only got the nail trim test at the end. So this was their only exposure to me. And same thing, if they struggled, if they walked away, I would just stop. So what we predicted was that there would be an increase in nail trim success. And what we defined as nail trim success was trimming all 10 front nails on the first try. We thought there'd be an increased nail trim success in the protocol cats compared to both the handling and the control cats. And then we also thought that cats exposed to the cooperative care would show a decreased latency to approach. I feel like I'm buzzing. Would show a decreased latency to approach the mat on day 2 of exposure to it. So basically, we thought that after that first day, hopefully, okay. Basically, we thought that after just one exposure to the mat, they would learn what that mat meant and walk up to me faster, seeking out attention or treats or whatever. So on to our analyses. All of my interactions with the cat were filmed for behavior coding. We had 8 independent coders, and we determined reliability via ICC. The behaviors that we scored during those daily sessions, so that's the days where either they were getting protocol or just cooperative care, were latency to approach the mat and then time spent on the mat. And during the nail trim test, we were primarily interested in just nail trim success. Was I able to trim all 10 nails or not? For our analyses, we have descriptives, of course. We also did a binary logistic regression with the outcome being that nail trim success. And then finally, we did not meet the assumptions for a linear mixed model. And so instead we did a Poisson regression to look at latency to approach on day 1 versus day 2 of exposure to the mat. And importantly, this was only with those protocol and handling cats because the control group did not get exposure to the mat in that same way, or exposure to the cooperative care in that same way. On to our results. We had 60 cats from the Sacramento SPCA, that's 20 per group. They were 68% female and about half intact. We had a mean estimated age of about 3 years and a mean length of stay, of 11.8 days. All of the cats in the protocol group took between 1 and 4 days to complete the protocol, so fairly brief. And we collected data from July to November. So the results of our logistic regression showed that there were greater odds of completing a nail trim for protocol group cats compared to both of the other groups, the handling and the control. So here on the x-axis, Yes indicates that they were able to, I got a full complete nail trim on them on that first try, and no is that I wasn't. So you can see that that's significantly higher in the protocol group as compared to either of the other groups for yeses. And also we saw a decreased latency to approach the mat on that second day of exposure to it as compared to the first. So the cats seemed to pick up on the fact that if they walked up to the mat, I would give them pets, I'd give them treats, I'd give them lots of good stuff. So in summary, the protocol only took between 1 and 4 days to get through all 5 steps. That's fairly brief, briefer than we initially thought it would be. And then the behavior modification seemed to increase the chance of successful nail trim in 1 attempt as compared to cats that only had handling or no interaction with me. And finally, the latency to approach the mat reduced on day 2 versus day 1. So my takeaway from this is mostly that the protocol can be practically employed in a shelter. It's a relatively brief protocol. It's very simple. And it showed a lot of cats able to finish a nail trim on that first try as compared to the other groups. I also think that the mat could be really useful as a mean of controlling interactions, even outside of the protocol. Often in a shelter, because these cats are already so stressed out, it could be very easy for someone to walk in and accidentally corner or scare a cat. And so the mat could be a really good way of showing cats that they can control the interactions with their volunteers or staff. And then finally, to our knowledge, this is the first study to use these kinds of behavior modification strategies in an empirical way to use for routine procedures. And so they could be useful for other routine procedures like teeth brushing or brushing of the hair for long hair cats. So some of our limitations, we only used 1 shelter, and it was just me that performed the protocol. So further research should really look at these protocols when performed by shelter staff in a variety of shelters. I was able to go into the shelter every day at the same time with the same cats, do the same thing. And I know that's not necessarily feasible for all shelters. And lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge my amazing undergrad research assistants, as well as Julie Coslins at Cat School, the Sacramento SPCA, my lab, the Animal Welfare Epi Lab, UC Davis Center for Animal Welfare, the ASPCA's Applied Behavior Grant for funding this research, and of course, my 2 cats who I got from this study.